This is the Ebb and Flow podcast with Eide Bailly, where you'll find inspired insights on forward movements in the middle market. Now let's get to the show.
Hello and welcome to Ebb and Flow. I'm your host, Clinton Larson, and today with me is my co-host, Jenni Huotari, partner in charge of Business Outsourcing and Strategy at Eide Bailly. Welcome back, Jenni.
Hello, Clinton. Good to be back.
And we are very excited to have as our guest today, Blaine Bertsch, co-founder and CEO of Dryrun. Welcome, Blaine.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
And maybe we should start out. Do you want to give a little background on yourself and your company?
Sure. Yeah, I'm co-founder and CEO at Dryrun, and Dryrun is a software that helps businesses take control of their cash flow. We always call it the 3 M's. We help them monitor their cash flow for risk, model their cash flow scenarios and make better decisions, and also manage their cash flow, which is taking care of those inflows, outflows of cash, overdue items, that sort of thing. And one of the best ways we find to do that, especially now during this kind of COVID time, is through CPAs. We know that equipping CPAs to help their clients through this is one of the best ways we can help business.
Blaine, we're so excited to have you here. Thanks for joining us. I mentioned to Clinton that you and I have known each other for a while. We first met a couple of years ago when you were selected to be part of one of the cohorts for the AI CPA and CPA.com Startup Accelerator. One
Yes.
of a hand-picked small group. And you and I worked together then when as advisor and mentee as part of that. That was a great experience. And as you mentioned, helped Dryrun, working with accounting firms like ourselves. We have that common goal of wanting to assist clients in better understanding their cash flow and making some of those predictions, those forecasted items for what it looks like in the future. You led into it a bit talking about the pandemic, knowing that within the last year, how we've approached forecasting or understanding cash flows has perhaps been tossed aside, and we've had to look at it differently this year. You know, when Clinton and I were talking, we really wanted to get your opinion on what you've seen in the last year, what you and the team have seen at Dryrun from our small and mid-sized business clients as they've persevered through this pandemic and the impact that it's had.
Yeah, and the struggles have been, we've never seen anything like it. Like the way Dryrun sort of came to be came from my experience of getting through 2008, 2009, through that recession. Looking at that now, that feels like a little baby recession compared to now. It's the volatility we see now is just, we've never seen anything like it. There's a lot of businesses that are struggling mightily. We hear every day that they're understaffed, they're overworked, that they're under massive amounts of pressure, and yet there's lots of relief programs. So there is money coming in, and so sometimes businesses are like, they've got this little breathing room, but they're all looking and going, yeah, but how long does that last? How long till we come out of this? And it always seems to be another month and another month and another month later, and they're wondering, what sort of resources may come up to help them make it through. Unfortunately, we are seeing businesses that are failing too. So it's just a really, really strange time, and it changes just daily. It just changes so quick, and so what we've done is like I mentioned in sort of the intro there, is we work a lot with CPA firms to help their clients, because the clients are they're scattered, they're running in every different direction. And they just need someone to say, kind of, here's the state of the union, and here's what's going on, and here's, how we can help.
Now, Blaine, you mentioned some of the unusual cash items, and I'm sure some of it might relate to PPP funds that have come in, or idle loans, or other forms of governmental assistance.
Yeah.
In terms of preserving cash or changing business operations, are there any other real solid trends that you've seen in that small and mid-sized business, that modifications that they're making to help conserve cash or continue to be profitable?
Yeah, well, they're cutting costs. They're on top of government programs. And of course, like, we're based in Canada, our largest customer base is in the United States, but we have customers all over the world. And so there's different programs from country to country, and some are working okay, and some are not, to be honest. But for businesses, one of the most interesting things that we're seeing, and this happened fairly early in the pandemic, and we're seeing it carrying on, is how they're adapting to it. Not just adapting on how they necessarily serve their clients, but we're seeing, service businesses add some sort of little bits of product lines. And we're seeing product companies add some kind of services, and they're adding, delivery, they're adding online courses, they're adding. So there's a lot of innovation we're seeing, and it's not like it's working. We've talked with businesses, and they're like, yeah, we there was one that was one of the most interesting ones. It was a laser tag business that has a massive space because they have laser tag and video games and all these things. Well, of course, they can't have kids come in. They're basically shut down. But what they did is they managed to adapt and offer schooling. So they could have a sort of a helper or a proctor. They had very limited number of students, but they had such a big space that they could space them out, and they've got all of the screens. So they basically turned it into a little school where, the rules change almost weekly here where we're at, but they managed to actually run a business and have some cash coming into their business from something that's completely unrelated to anything they did, but it was taking advantage of the resources and the opportunity they had.
Blaine, I could see several others looking to either slightly pivot or make a really dynamic change in order to continue on going forward in some uncertain times. How do they do that from a cash flow projection, knowing that the business model is totally different than what they've been used to for their prior existence? Are you in the team needing to be involved with that?
Well, I am at times, and it just depends. Sometimes I'm actually called in depending on the business itself, and some of them just have very different ways of managing things. So I may be actually called in personally to say, okay, here's how you may want to approach it, because it is a really unique time. But it is tricky. It's making sure you have enough capital to be able to try some of these things, and it's easy to say that. It's difficult in reality, and that still comes back to, do you have access to loans and PPP and all these different programs? When that money comes in, is how do you make the most use of it? One of the scarier things is when money comes in and a business if they run their cash flow from their bank account, that is one of the scariest things we see. So they might get a loan, they might have money in there, but they really don't know how much they're burning through every month, because a lot of them are in a loss position every month. They're not really sure. They look at the bank account and they think, yeah, I think I'm good. I've got money in the bank. And it feels like a relief, but that money dries up really fast. And then they start looking, and like here in Canada, like we know restaurants, they don't have a patio season for probably minimum 3 months. And at that point, they're going to have heaters really going to try and get people to be able to sit outside. They have to be able to not only say, we have to get through that 3 months, but we have to be able to sort of staff up at that point. We have to be able to have our patio going. We're going to have to burn through a bunch of propane on heaters. We probably have different personal protective equipment that they have to have, a different, now it might be 2 masks by the time we get to them, or these N95 masks, or that all has costs associated with it. We're talking with businesses every day, and the one thing we really emphasize, though, is not to try and boil the ocean. Just what is the one thing that is sort of worrying you right now or keeping you up? Let's do a very simple projection. Let's do a very simple forecast. Let's do a couple of comparisons, and let's keep it simple. And we hear that actually more often from businesses now. What would you like to see? I just want it to be text, a text message that says, this is where you're at. Like, they want it simple, quick, straightforward, because they can't take on all of the high complications. They're just like, give me the most important stuff right now, and let's work our way through it. So we're seeing a lot of that where they don't have the time and attention that they normally would.
Yes, I think I've heard that before from our data analytics team and others. When you try to focus on too many things, you lose sight and it becomes overwhelming, and then the tools are less effective. So certainly great advice. Don't try to boil the ocean, really focus on what's most important.
Actually, one of our CPA partners, our director of client success, Barbara, was online with them, and they were talking, and they're talking about what they could deliver to a client, about cash flow. And finally, they said, well, let's just give them a call and find out. Gave them a call, and it was a very simple answer. Man, I need this, and this is just, this helps everything. And it kind of gets off the phone, and Barb's like, yeah, they were amazed at, it's kind of easy, but it is exactly what that client needs. And so that is, again, even from the CPA side, is just talk with the clients and find out what's going to help them make that next decision without, clouding their brain with too much stuff.
Yep. We could do a lot of things, but it isn't necessarily effective. Now, Blaine, as you're working with them, obviously in these discussions, we're making some assumptions that go into our forecast, and then we're retrospectively looking back at those. Are our assumptions accurate? What if those conversations look like, or that reflection on some of the assumptions in the early conversations gone? Now, as we've said, you've changed your business model. We know a little more now than we knew before. How do those conversations look compared to what they were before?
Well, the big thing is before you had more, you had more time, and you kind of knew, it was seasonal. You knew kind of what was coming, and they're going to be a lot more accurate. What's happening now is you have to check in a lot more. You have to update your projections a lot more. You have to stay on top of your receivables a lot more, because you have to get that water level really quickly and find out, is this actually working? Aged receivables are, honestly, we're working, they're through the roof, and they're extended. It's like, yeah, this customer always paid. It was always late, but it was 45 days. Well, now I don't know when it's coming. And so they're staying on top of those receivables. So the assumptions are they're more challenging, but it's almost like you're getting information every day. So make sure you're in there at least once a week, and you're updating things, because before, when you could say, we can slide through the fall because it's a good time of the year for us, and we kind of know where things are going. You kind of look at it a little bit. Now it's like, yeah, is that working? Because they're cutting close to the edge as it is, and things are so fluid. They have to keep updating a lot more often and stay on top of the real operational stuff. Who owes me money, and when am I getting paid, and who do I have to pay, and when can I actually do that? So.
If you've enjoyed listening to the Ebb and Flow podcast, be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so that you never miss an episode. Also, please take a moment to share it with your professional network and leave us a review. That way, we'll be able to reach a larger audience, providing business leaders with inspired insight on forward movement in the middle market.
Not to totally plug what it is that you do necessarily, but one of the challenges why our clients and small and mid-sized businesses weren't doing that more before is it's a lot to maintain, to build out a forecast and to change it for the assumptions and everything environmentally that's going on. And now we think everything we knew before might not be relevant anymore. So it is a lot of assumptions. And I think ties into the importance of using some form of technology in order to help do that, so that we're really investing our time in the right place, analyzing the information, not inputting the data, checking our spreadsheet. You tell me, Blaine, periodically how many errors the average spreadsheet contains, right?
Oh, it's mind-boggling. And I will share you a story. At one point, I did have something in the spreadsheet, drove all the way over to my accountant's office and sat down and said, "What is this?" And he clicked on, I had emailed it to him, and I went there and sat down with him. I drove all the way over, and he said, "Well, it's a broken equation." And me thinking I'm so smart, I stood up, and I picked up my paper sheet that I'd printed out, and I shook my head and walked out. And I know I'm getting a bill for that, right? It happens. We've got inaccuracies in spreadsheets. They're out of date. They take much too long to build. They've got there's a lot of issues with them, and the reasons that we the clients come to us is because we'll speed up a lot of that, and at times we can dramatically speed up. Like one of our clients, we literally save them 3 days a week. We do in the first 5 minutes Monday morning, what was taken until Wednesday afternoon. Multi-location, multi-currency, all of these things. But the other issue is the communication side. So you're sitting down with management, you're sitting down with the team, and you put a spreadsheet up, and you end up explaining how you made the spreadsheet and what the color codes mean and everything. We help just to be able to look at it and go, I understand what's happening. And so there's a number of factors that are really impeding businesses, and it's confusion and time and inaccuracy and all these things. There are systems out there that can help, and there's systems from I'm talking about the cash flow side, but for what it's like if you want a cash flow is accurate, well, the bookkeeping has to be up to date. But there's all kinds of terrific systems to help manage your receipts and your bookkeeping and engage someone. Like, this is not where you scrimp and save money, is on your finances. Make sure your books are up to date and you have the optics you need to make decisions. Otherwise, you're blind and you're trying to fly. It's hard enough to fly in the dark as it is, but now it's in a massive storm too. And it's too much. It's too risky, even though it is a little bit of an expense.
Yeah, Blaine, you've probably seen that where some have connected their accounts to the tool. And when you have the conversation about it, it looks off. And the reason is that the underlying information wasn't updated or isn't accurate.
It does happen, but I also one of the stories that I always remember is there was a client that came in and buzzed our support channel through chat, and Barbara got on a call with them, and she said, "What's the problem?" She says, "Well, I signed up, and this was I think it was like in April or May or something like this, a couple of years ago." And she said, "Well, I signed up for Dryrun, and I hooked up my account, and I'm out of cash in June." And she just had no idea that it was just a matter of like 5-6 weeks or whatever it was. She was out of cash. That was the problem. We were expecting a technical question, and she was, "What do I do?" And Barb's, "Call your accountant, like get some help with this." But it was basically that quick of data comes in and there's, wow, we got a problem here. And some of the things that we've been working on in Dryrun, our latest sort of rollout is what's called a Dryrun Insights. And it did change our roadmap a little bit away from, going into artificial intelligence, things like that, to go, how do we help people through the pandemic when data from last year is broken, data from the year before, like it's all broken. There weren't trends to predict this. And what we looked at is how do we get really important information, top line information really quickly to people so they can just evaluate where am I at and monitor that risk and figure out, am I in trouble and do I need help? Because we saw that, but we want to make it quicker and easier for them to get that information to be able to go on the phone and say, call their accountant and say, I need help. I don't really understand what's going on here.
Blaine, previously you've mentioned the 3 a.m.ers. You've got kind of a designation for the crowd that comes to you and signs up in the middle of the night. Are there any certain characteristics of that 3 a.m. crowd?
Maybe pre-COVID, it was a little bit more. It was people that probably didn't really know where they stood, and a little bit of insight on that. The 3 a.m. crowd is when we would see signups in the middle of the night, but look, and it wasn't overseas. They were in our same time zone, and it was 3 a.m. and you realize they're literally up at 3 a.m. trying to figure out their cash flow, and so they've got some indication there's a problem. That's all amplified so much now because so many businesses are worried about their cash flow. They'll have a short-term freedom where they say, okay, I've got a little bit of cash, I've got a little loan or something. And then you're looking a couple of weeks later or a month later, they're back in panic mode. And a lot of that is attributed to they really don't know. That's why they're coming in. With business owners, a lot of times they don't want to know. They're scared to know. And then it hits that point where it's like, well, now I got to know. Like, I know there's a problem. I'm too deep. I have to know. They're going in, they're trying to look at it. And that's how you plan your way out. And we had a client actually come to us one time. It was actually a CPA came to us and asked our support team to help them set up a forecast for one of their clients. And this was early pandemic. This was, I think it's April, May-ish, something like that. The unfortunate story was they were shutting down the business. And so they were building a forecast in Dryrun to figure out, how do we shut this down basically with the least amount of damage, the what if scenarios of what if we do this, what if we do that. And so they modeled this out, and the accountant went left to go and talk with their clients. And we got a call a few days later, and they said that it's actually flipped around, that when they showed the forecast to their clients and they started looking at the data, they actually found a path through. The clients looked at it and went, if we reduce this and we add this and we get a little money here, I think we can ride this out. And so it went from, I guess, the red alert probably in the bank account to something actionable where they could say, I think we can actually save the business going in this direction. So that was just a really interesting story for us. And of course, a story that warms all our hearts because it's a business in a really difficult time that managed to find a way through. But I suppose the moral of the story is that having access to that information and a full picture of what does your revenue look like coming in, where can you have money coming in, where is it going out, and when is it going out? Because sometimes you can delay those things and speed other things up, and it can actually change the fortunes of your business.
Now, Blaine, maybe tying into the analogy of when's the right time to build a tree, like 30 years ago, when you hear that saying, in this situation, that example, there's a client in a really urgent need. But I would guess you're not suggesting everyone waits until that urgent need to look at cash flow and to forecast. In your opinion, when is the right time for the company to really invest in that at the right level? Have the tools, pay attention to the analysis.
Yeah, today. is the short answer. Get started today. And like we mentioned earlier, you don't have to have the ultimate massive forecast. Another thing I say all the time is like, you're not building this perfect GPS map with all the information. You want the napkin where it's like, go up to the tree and turn right and you get to where you want to go. Something simple. Even our success team, we've had some success with a lot of businesses saying, look, let's start with a 1-minute forecast. And it's literally, they put in 4 or 5 numbers, they hit auto repeat, and you can get an idea of, okay, here's what's going on. Here's what we're expecting coming in, going out, and just a starting point. But it's important to start right away so that you're not waiting for that 3 a.m., wake up in the middle of the night and go, holy smokes, I think we're in real serious trouble here. You're finding a way out. And another example, and Jenni, you probably heard this example before. I probably use it too much, but the best example I give is it's like stepping off a curb in front of a bus. And if you step off the curb and the bus is 5 feet away, you're going to get schmucked. If the bus is 3 blocks down, step back on the curb, or you cross the road, or you can wave them down. You have all these options. And we always say that buying yourself time buys yourself options. And so that's why getting started, knowing where you're at, gives you that ability to talk with your banker, talk with your accountant, to understand some of your options, talk with your clients, scale back your costs while you can before it's too late, and it could save your business. So get started today. It doesn't have to be this massive, overwhelming lift. Start simple with your problem you're facing right now and let it evolve over time. And going back to when we were talking at the start, this is how we made it through that 2008, 2009. Started with, can I pay my payroll on Friday? To within, weeks and months of having a really solid understanding of what it costs to stay in business, what our cash flow was like, when cash was coming in, when it was going out, what do we have to follow up on, and a sales pipeline with some discipline. And we knew when cash was coming in from our sales pipeline, what was likely to close, and to the point where it actually helped us negotiate contracts and make sure that the payment schedule on the contracts and all the terms made sense to allow us to keep going. And it completely transformed our business. So you don't do it overnight, but you'll get some value and some benefit right out of the gate. And if you keep it up, it can become a real advantage for your business and an opportunity to grow and really understand where you're going.
Yeah. And as you're mentioning here, Blaine, you're not just someone who created a technology company. You were someone who was a small business owner. That was just like the clients that you and I and our firms and all of our peers that we're collectively working with. Your point of view came from those shoes and understanding the cash flow challenges. And you created a tool that was valuable to you, and you feel like it's valuable to many others in the small and mid-sized business space. And if I were to analyze your book title, which you haven't yet mentioned, I want you to have a second to plug that. Clearly, you sound like a prophet. So maybe just mention how it led into that book and what the basis for the book is about, just so the listeners have some idea.
Yeah. So the book title, and let me stress, this was from 2018. So this wasn't opportunist. It's called Pandemic Cash Flow. But the angle was, this is a global issue, and it affects businesses everywhere, and it's really severe. And so that's why I wrote the book. And the book really it's just a basic primer on cash flow. And the reason I wrote it is because I read everywhere, every blog and business article and everything would say, cash flow kills, a third of businesses, and a cash flow will kill 50% by their 5th birthday or whatever it is. And then it would basically the advice would, just get a spreadsheet. That's it. Just get a spreadsheet, and magically everything will take care of itself. And so I wrote the book, just a really fundamental guide to, here are some of the issues with cash flow. Here are the problems that lead to cash flow shortfalls. Here's how you can help diagnose what's happening in your business. And just a really simple way to understand cash flow and start to build some systems to take care of it. And it does get into a little bit more advanced, where you can, how you could set up a sales pipeline if you're doing bigger sales, and gauge how much is coming in and when it's coming in, and things like that. So there just was I thought, a fundamental gap in, financial literacy for business owners that oftentimes don't come from a finance background. In fact, almost never do. And just a way to give them a good primer on how to manage their cash flow.
Yeah, certainly. As they say, cash is king. And I think that's become even more evident in the last year than, in my prior 2 decades working in this industry with a lot of small and mid-sized businesses, it's been the critical components to whether the doors are still open or the lights are still on, tomorrow and further down the road.
And I would like to say that it's once we get through the other side of this pandemic, and businesses, the ones that are kind of left standing, will be tested heavily, but they're going to be in a good position. They'll have, I don't want to say that, so whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger, but in this case, it will, I think, to a large degree. But understanding your cash flow and being able to build projections and models is what is going to help businesses grow faster and excel. So coming out of here, you're hoping that businesses will come out truly stronger and able to really accelerate that growth.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great positive note, I think, for us to leave our listeners with. So on behalf of Clinton, Blaine, I want to thank you for joining us today and sharing all your knowledge as it relates to being a prior business owner and studying cash flow and working with so many small and mid-sized businesses. Thank you for being here and for being part of our podcast. It's very much appreciated.
Oh, thank you so much. I always love chatting small business, chatting cash flow, and of course, chatting with you, Jenni, and Clinton, who I just met. So this was a really terrific time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Ebb and Flow podcast. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. At Eide Bailly, what inspires you inspires us. We provide a suite of accounting, advisory, and technology services with your business in mind. Visit our website to access tools and resources tailored for you. eidebailly.com/ebbflow. This podcast is distributed with the understanding that Eide Bailly LLP is not rendering legal, accounting, or other professional advice. Listeners should consult with their business advisors before acting on any of the information or opinions shared. For audience questions and topic ideas, visit eidebailly.com/ebbflow. That's eidebailly.com/ebbflow. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to tune in next time.